I read a half a dozen books that sort of went at these different angles and wrote about it. So I start out knowing nothing, and then I write about it, and I try to write to learn, which is the most terrifying part of AI, by the way. If you take out the writing, you take out the thought.
Completely agree.
The other thing that scares me about it, boy, there's a squirrel. AI is going to make the system very unforgivingly brittle. I'm not worried as much about the authoritarian slant that Elon occasionally talks about, which might be just to fake us out. Who knows? I am worried that we're going to reach a point where, when everything computer does is binary. So you go to the grocery store, you slip your credit card in, it says you're good to go or didn't work. Swipe it again. Didn't work. Sorry, you're out of here, right? They debank people. This is a big problem. What happens when everything is so AI'd up that there's no person anywhere within earshot who can help you at all? No one who can say, okay, let me get this for you.
Right. There's been a misunderstanding, or there's some sort of human nuance required.
It happened on the other day on a credit card where I was talking to a lady and it kept sending me in these loops and she finally straightened out. But what happens when the code is being written by computers so there's no human who understands the code? So the system will be very brittle, be very unforgiving. Forget about whether it's used nefariously. Forget about whether someone uses it as an authoritarian tool, which is a very real possibility. And I worry about that a lot. Just the fact that no one will know who's driving the cab ever on anything. And also now you're taking out the intellectual part. So when I write, when I write a scientific paper, the project's not done until I've written it, because that's where you lay it out. And if you can't put it on paper coherently with no internal contradictions, you're not done.
You're not done understanding it.
You're not done understanding
so
it. So the writing is understanding.
I think people who don't write for a living or aren't forced to write regularly don't understand. This concept is a hard one. But it's through writing, or I would also say speaking, public speaking, that putting concepts into words makes the concepts intelligible to the person who's articulating them. Like, you don't really understand something until you've been forced to write about it.
It's like a comedy shop. You go, the great comedians will go down to the cheapo comedy shops to practice, to figure out what works and what doesn't work, right? And then they go on Johnny Carson.
Exactly.
And so you
when there's no writing, there's no thinking.
Right. So I read about Maui, the fires. I wrote about that. Very clearly a land grab. You may remember how many kids died?
No.
Do you remember? The USA article said 750 kids are missing.
Yep.
Right? When a kid's missing after something like that, they're dead. But they're not missing, they're dead. Maybe a couple found their way, someone drove them out of town, but they're dead. Try to find anywhere a statement about dead kids now. You can't find it. You go to Wikipedia. You search the word child, you search the word, you read it, there's no mention of dead children. There were 750 kids missing, according to USA Today. Then all of a sudden the governor's saying, well, we're worried about land speculators, so we're going to buy the land up so that the speculators can't get it. And I go, so you can sell it to your friends, right? Is it possible maybe they mowed down Lahaina because they want to put up resorts and things, right? But what also was out there was this idea of directed energy weapons starting the fires. Now, I think that was a dead end. I don't think directed energy weapons were used, even though they're called DEWs, even though there's a DEW facility on Maui. You don't need that. And there were videos. I go, I think those are fake. So I found nothing, but I used it as an excuse to read up on DEWs. And I was reading RAND reports from 40 years ago. And
what is a directed energy weapon?
It's basically Star Wars. And so it's Reagan Star Wars, and everyone said, oh, that's just science fiction. I go, well, Gorbachev seemed to want to get rid of them every chance he got. So Gorbachev took them very seriously. So it turns out what you do is you put something in space, then it shoots some sort of energy, guided energy down to the surface of the Earth. And the different frequencies have different efficacies. And so some are really good at hitting a target. Some broaden out, like microwaves are different than some sort of ultraviolet laser. I'm not very good at this stuff. But and then I started reading about what they do is they use a pulse of one laser to punch a hole through the atmosphere, and then the second pulse would go through that hole. I mean, it's really clever stuff. This is 40-year-old RAND reports. What do they have behind the paywall 40 years later? Now, the best, I think, evidence of a DEW being used, and I was reading about fires in different places where trees were burning that shouldn't have burned, and cars. I wrote about it. If someone wants to go read it, that was a couple of years ago. The best evidence of a DEW. So if you've got these, you got to test them, right? It's like why you need bioweapons labs in Ukraine. You got to test them. You can't use lab rats. You look at the Quebec fires. Satellite imagery of the Quebec fires, very mysterious. About 26-ish fires started simultaneously. How do you know some? Well, if a fire starts and then another one starts, it'll be downwind. So you'll see, it'll look like the Hawaiian Islands, right?
Right.
Boom, all at once. 26 fires. In a crudely buckshot pattern, there was 350 miles in diameter. Boy, that's a determined arsonist. Or at least 26 of them.
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. With helicopter, I mean, there are no roads. So,
and say, no, a cell phone can't do it, nothing, right? They're in the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden they all start simultaneously. And I'm going, okay, that probably was them testing out their weapons. And we have a lot of wars to test weapons, right?
So your basic overarching theory is around 2014-15, it became clear to the people running the world that you can't keep information under wraps anymore because the internet is impossible to control. And so you had to flood people's brains with extraneous and misleading information. And
shut down people. They booted the president of the United States off Twitter.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
Because he was a racist? That's what
Shut up, racist.
That's what they told me.
Shut up, racist. Right?
He was a racist.
Right. Something like 70,000 got booted off Twitter. My sister-in-law, she had a Twitter feed. She can't get it back. Somehow, I don't know how I survived.
What was her crime?
She must have said something favorable about Trump or something. I don't know.
But the control of information, the shaping of people's understandings of the world around them, that's the whole game right there.
So I used to say the internet was democracy's greatest hope and worst enemy. And that it was a battle. I don't think we're going to win it. And the reason I don't is because it's too powerful. And so whoever has control of it will then have that power. So it's only a battle for who gets control of it.
Control of information. Control
of the digital world. Yeah.
So if you see voices out there dissenting from
I hear voices talking.
If you see or hear voices that are dissenting from the official storyline, they're going to have to be silenced or eliminated. I mean,
well, look at what happened. Look at the ambushes that occurred when Thomas Massie, who I think is great, Rand Paul, who I think has matured immensely, and who is the third Republican who stepped away from the narrative, and all of a sudden the attacks were relentless. Now, that could just be Trump being Trump.
It wasn't just Trump attacking them, though.
I know.
Marjorie
Taylor Greene, who, by the way, is nowhere near as stupid. I mean, she's not even stupid.
Oh, I know.
She ran a construction company.
Oh, I know. And her, she just doesn't have whatever that normal, the fear that controls people in D.C. where like, I can't.
But how do you turn on Thomas Massie? Marjorie Taylor Greene at least played a role in kayfabe that you could imagine drawing fire. Massie's this guy, who built his own house and fixes his own car, and he's an engineer. He's an archetype of who we ought to be
as a country. I so vehemently agree.
And they turned on him.
Yeah, well, I haven't.
We know why they turned on
texted with him this morning. No, I mean, you could say I disagree with Thomas Massey, but if you think Thomas Massey is the problem,
you are the problem.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Just because, first of all, he's a decent man, which always matters to me, and I think it should matter to all of us. You could, give Thomas Massey a routing number, and he's not going to take $1. He's just not. He's not going to.
The only one without a handler.
That's true. And I think we should admire that, even if you think that all members of Congress should be required to have handlers. It's okay to live in a world where one doesn't. That's what I find so.
Well, it's not okay to live in a world where everyone else does.
No, I agree with you, but I just find what's so interesting, and there's a religious quality to all of these conversations that I find so striking. It's like, it's okay if you have, all this power, all this money, if you're running the U.S. government or whoever you are with a lot of power. You can afford to have some percentage of the population not play along. It doesn't need to be an Albanian election in 1982. Like, you can have some dissent.
Unless you're an authoritarian state.
I guess that's right. I mean, but even in an effective authoritarian state, in Saudi Arabia, in the Emirates, these are, basically theocracies. They don't agree with that, but these are Islamic states under Sharia law. You can kind of dissent. It's okay. You just can't do anything really threatening, of course.
Right.
But more dissent is allowed in Abu Dhabi than in D.C. I just find that just absolutely incredible. Yeah. Like, what is this? Why can't they allow Thomas Massey to just have his own Massey views?
He has a vote.
He's a vote, okay, but you got hundreds of others. Like, I just think it's weird. There's this desire to make sure that nobody sings off the song sheet. And that person must be killed. And I don't enforce that among my own children.
So,
do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I absolutely know. It's
bizarro.
What you're talking about. We used to allow opposing views.
Yeah, I mean, look, if someone is really a threat to the system, well, I think that should be allowed personally, because the people in the government.
Depends on in what way, but yes.
In what way? I have a very wide strike zone for that. But I get it if the system is like, I'm sorry, you're an actual threat, we have to kill you. Okay, systems exist to preserve themselves. I understand that. What I really can't even comprehend is someone out there in a place I've never been and never will go among 350 million people